This is the e-learning podcast, episode number 40.
About 3 years ago, we did a book for an author who's also an emergency room doctor in DC.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw in his practice the results of young children, young adults, and police clashing. Basically, African American, as you know, what's going on in society with white supremacists and the society of racism and Black Lives Matter. And this was even before this movement.
Right.
And he wrote a book on getting home alive, how to survive an interaction with the police.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
And it was, you would think that it would be one-sided, but it wasn't.
Welcome to the e-learning podcast from lmspulse.com. My name's Stephen Laddick, and I'm the director at LMS Pulse. Do you ever feel like an indie author or creator? If you do, I'm sure my guest for today will make a lot of sense to you. Jan Zucker is the co-founder and CEO of Digital Content Creators, a company that's part agency, part publisher, and part coaching service. For 10 years now, Digital Content Creators has helped launch countless successful courses, always staying ahead of the trends in technology. In this enlightening conversation, Jan and I talk about the origins of digital CC, both in history and the seed within creators that makes a course, just like a good book or a compelling read. We also talk about the general process of turning knowledge, experience, and content into an immersive digital learning experience, and how this process has evolved and continued to increase in pace over the years. We also talk about why Jan thinks your biggest problem is not about content, but about your sense of experience or narrative structure. And he offers some tips to overcome your mental scattering. And then finally, Jan and I talk about why he's bullish in mobile learning, XR, and AI, and why he thinks that as a course creator, you should be too. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors.
The e-learning podcast is sponsored by the e-learning Success Summit. Learn from more than 40 experts how to teach, work, and learn online without being overwhelmed. Get your free ticket to the summit at elearningsuccesssummit.com. And lmspulse.com, your best source for news, information, and resources for e-learning professionals for more than 10 years. Get our free roundup of the week's top news at lmspulse.com.
Hello, Jan. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Stephen. It's great to be here.
Jan, I see, like so many people, obviously this is a podcast and we're recording on video. Where are you sitting? Where do we find you sitting today?
I am sitting in New City, New York, which is approximately 30 miles north of Manhattan.
30 miles north of Manhattan. I've asked everyone this question on the show just to sort of kick things off and start it, but how's your COVID going? I mean, I know we're now 9 or 10 months into the pandemic or whatnot, but what do things look like for you right now?
Well, it's been tough, but I've been very careful since I have some underlying conditions. I have a full house with my children moving back in with their children since this started.
Wow.
Right now it's December 1st and we're starting another surge.
Yeah.
In New York. And we're getting every kind of different instructions every day from our governor. And since I have students and teachers in the house, it's been quite the adventure trying to keep up with their schedule.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I didn't know you had both students and teachers. Very cool.
Both students and teachers.
And here you are as well.
And in school. I'm sorry, in virtual and in-person schooling.
Wow. Virtual and in-person schooling. So you've got the blended learning going on the whole time.
Just unbelievable.
Oh, great. This is good. This is going to be a great conversation. So you're the founder of a company called Digital Content Creators. You help people to put their content online in terms of courses, in terms of ebooks and these kinds of things. Don't let me steal, I don't want to steal your thunder here. Tell us, what have you been doing? What are the services you offer? And, what are the typical clients that you work with?
Well, we have two basic services. We do print and ebook conversion and production. And from that, we also do self-help authors e-learning. So we try to bundle print, ebook, and an e-learning course for self-help authors and self-published authors, which is an interesting concept and not always understood by the authors. I try to make it clear to authors sometimes that once they write a book, basically, it's old news already. Just like you read a newspaper, it's old news the next day.
Amen.
Things change so rapidly in this civilization, in our society, that they need a way to amplify their content. They need a way to reach new audiences. And a book is not always the way to do it. Not everybody's a reader.
Yeah, sure. But would you agree that a book is still a sort of a calling card of legitimacy or a credibility builder to say, hey, look, I have written this book. I've mostly because it's like, hey, I took the time and effort to do it, or is that would you even say maybe not even?
Oh no, absolutely, you're 100% right. I'm a bibliophile from way back, and I spend my vacation, part of my vacations in bookstores. So I'm the last one who's going to say a book is not irrelevant. But for Gen X and the newer generations, it's more about engaging with content than just consuming it.
So take us through that process. Like, so when somebody comes up, incidentally, I wasn't aware that you focused on self-help publishers. That's really interesting.
Well, no, we do this for printing, for book production, we'll do anybody, but for self-help publishers, we'd like to expand their horizons and move into a digital format as well.
Okay. So take me through that process. Somebody, comes up, they're a self-help guru, or they've got either a health product or a mental health product, or, some other type of coaching service or something like that. Walk us through that process.
I'll give you one example. So about 3 years ago, we did a book for an author who's also an emergency room doctor in DC. Mm-hmm. And he saw in his practice the results of young children, young adults, and police clashing. Basically, African American, as you know, what's going on in society with white supremacists and the society of racism and Black Lives Matter. And this was even before this movement. Right. And he wrote a book on getting home alive, how to survive an interaction with the police.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
And it was, you would think that it would be one-sided, but it wasn't. It was a book telling people how to deal with a traffic stop or dealing with the police at any point in their lives. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting because he saw both sides. He saw the cops coming in mauled by people who they stopped for no reason, and he saw kids being abused. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a book, and it was a bestseller. And we redid the book about a year later. We did the ebook, and then he decided to develop a course so he can go out into his community and show exactly what to do. And the foundation of the course was 11 steps that you need to be able to take when you are stopped by the police. And including in the course were some really harsh videos of police encounters with traffic stops and the results of that. Mm-hmm. And it was eye-opening for me because, you see it on the news, but when you see it in real life and you see it, and you hear about it firsthand, it's really just a horrible situation.
Yeah, really. I'm sure very affecting. Yeah, very powerful material as well.
Very powerful.
Impression. So he did his book, you then did his ebook, he built out the course. And so what does that look like to you? Does the course ultimately end up becoming something that he keeps on his laptop and then takes his presentations? Does it live online somewhere? What's that end result?
Well, he did it, interestingly enough, he did it two ways. He did it as a teaching course where it was a self-directed course. And he also put it on an LMS so he could interact with some of the community as well, where he could see where people were having problems with. So it was an ask, it was drag and drop questions. There were a lot of that interactivities in it after each major point.
Okay. Right.
So he did it both ways. He sent it out into the community, and he also decided to help certain groups that had more problems. I guess they were gang members, actually.
And is this something that he did it on a sort of a nonprofit basis? So, this was
I think he did, we don't get into the marketing of it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So we did, and he's writing, from what I gather, he's writing his second book, which is completely different about how emergency room operations can translate into business decisions.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So basically, basically taking the emergency room triage and using that framework in order to turn into a business, a business.
How you can make quick decisions in business and how important they ought to make them right.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, cool. So where do you come in the process, or does digital content creators do you usually find people at the very beginning of the process where they haven't even started a book and they're kind of generating an idea, and you coach them through, here's how you write a book? Or do they usually have a book and then you take it and put it into a digital format? Where do you usually find your clients in the process?
Well, books are only one part of our business. I mean, we do the print ebook and e-learning course is a challenge for authors. Some of them understand it, some of them don't. We also do work with corporations, educational institutions, and coaches and trainers to create their material and to develop their material into online. Especially now with COVID happening, a lot of them can't get out there to see their audience or to see their clients. So let me give you one example. We're doing now a leadership course, and the couple that does the training, and they do training for large companies. They do training and they bring in a jazz trio with them.
Ah, yes, we had talked about this. Yeah, I've seen this before. Yeah,
and I think I showed you the demo, didn't I?
Yeah.
And it's just, it's when you add that music and you see some of the, the way the musicians compete, and the first chapter of this or the first module is called antagonistic cooperation.
Yeah. Sure.
So
and anyone who's listened to jazz knows, that it's this cacophony that ultimately results into something beautiful, right?
Right. As they compete, it brings them both up a level. So the biggest project we've done is taking an American Sign Language course.
Okay.
And and developing it from a print workbook to an online course.
Okay.
We're 18 months into this. The first module took us 9 months to do. And we've gone from 9 months time frame down to about 4 weeks now for each module.
Fantastic.
So the authors who had a lot of say in it are deaf, and deaf people don't have as much of a presence online as hearing people. So
we've had lots of people on the show to talk about those accessibility issues, for sure.
Yeah, and even their accessibility, and they had some particular aspects they wanted. They wanted the course to be very much like the book. And if you try to learn American Sign Language, it's not easy. So there wasn't a lot of graphics in it. It was plain videos, and there's a lot of videos, 5, 6, 7, second videos. Maybe in each module, maybe there are 60 or 70 of them. So this was an amazing opportunity to take something that was written and create a total online learning experience for the students. This is a course that is given in colleges and high schools across the country.
Fantastic. And so when they came to you, had they already produced all the video, or is this something that
video was produced? It was sitting on DVDs, and they had so much videos that their DVDs were getting full. So they had to now start adding a second DVD. And believe it or not, like any other language, ASL, American Sign Language, develops. So new words come in, and it was very difficult for them to create another print book. So this is giving them, we call it going digital first. So they now have 7 of the 13 modules completed, and they're rolling it out in the spring semester. Fantastic.
That's cool. Now, and when you roll it out, you said it's in high schools and universities, world, across the U.S. Are you creating an output that can basically be dropped into any LMS?
Yes.
And so what does that look like? Is it SCORM content? Is it H5P?
It's SCORM compliant. SCORM is an old standard, but still being used 80%
everywhere. Sure.
Everywhere. A lot of new stuff is coming out, but it hasn't replaced SCORM yet. The problem has been that every LMS is a different LMS. So they're using a lot of it in Canvas.
Okay.
And to import something out of Canvas into Canvas had created a problem.
Oh, okay.
So they had to create an LTI to make it work.
Okay. Sure. All right.
And now they do Canvas, and they do Blackboard, and they do Schoology, and they're going to keep doing it. And right after they finish these homework assignment books, they're going to create a self-help ASL course,
Cool.
self-directed.
All right, cool. So when you've told us about the gentleman who wrote the emergency room book, this this American Sign Language book. What are the big fail points, or what are the big hurdles that you find for most either authors or people who want to put a course online when they come to you? Where are they? Where are they failing? Where are they having difficulty, and how do you help them push through that?
Well, not necessarily the ones I just told you about, but a lot of problems when people want to create a course is their course is not up, their material is not up to date.
Okay.
So now it's but I want to have it updated.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem
would this be like, for instance, a college professor who's taught the same course for the last 10 years, or is this somebody who's been a coach for 5 years, or like who tells you that their stuff isn't updated? Is everyone?
Yeah, well, one of the clients we worked with is a company that designs and builds Ziplines and challenge courses around the country.
Okay, cool. I love hearing about other people's stories. Like I wouldn't have even thought that's a thing to do. But of course, as soon as you say it, I'm like, of course, I see Ziplines everywhere, and like in Colorado.
And there are hundreds of them literally around, and they build incredible adventures for Adventure Park. They even told me that there are private individuals who have Ziplines on their property.
Sure.
So imagine that. So
hey, I used to live in Costa Rica, and there's a whole treehouse community, and the only way to get between the houses and the trees is by Zipline. So yeah, you can find them everywhere.
So their problem was they have these manuals all over the place, and these were serious courses. These weren't light courses. These were courses train the trainer. So people had to pass these courses in order to be able to teach the operators of the parks how to run these zip lines.
Sure.
So there was equipment that kept up being updated. There was self-help, safety and health concerns that they had to deal with the FAA, with the health organization.
I mean, you're putting people at you're suspending people from a wire. There's a lot of safety issues there. For sure.
A lot of safety issues. Who can even get on? It was a safety issue for a pregnant woman. If you have heart issues, there were so many. So they had their notes all over the place.
Oh, okay. And so when they came to you, it was kind of like, hey, we do this and we really want to consolidate. And so did you take them through the process of consolidating all that and designing?
We did it chapter by chapter. And that delays the whole process because if they have to rewrite it, we can't rewrite it because we don't know enough. We can't create the content for them. But when it finally came out, you should have, their videos were absolutely amazing. I mean, the videos are 400 feet over a ravine. And as they're building it, you're seeing these people holding on to trees. And they were really ecologically sound ideas. They were really built into the woods and they had one that was, I forgot the name of the hotel that was in The Shining. You remember that movie?
I do, because I'm from Colorado. Yes, absolutely.
So they built a zip line over that. It was 400 feet over a river.
Oh wow, cool! Right on. So, now, of course, the name of the hotel is escaping me, but I know it's.
Yeah, me too.
So tell me, when somebody like the Zipline company comes to you, and again, going back to that first thing, do you find most of your potential clients is that where they're at? They're like, they either have a great idea or they've been doing something for the last 10 years and it's just become second nature to them, and then organizing their thoughts. Is that the first big major hurdle?
Yes, that's the first big major problem.
Okay. And how long does it take for people
who have it all together? I mean,
Yeah, sure. I'm assuming that's a pretty rare bird though.
Yeah, one of the interesting ones we had, we did a course for an EMT training school. And so the idea of e-learning is not, you can't create everything in e-learning. So if you're going to become an EMT, there's a certain amount of book learning you can do. And then like anything else, you've got to be out in the field practicing.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And driver's license. You need to take the driver's test, but then you got to get behind the wheel and drive.
Yep.
So they had their material all in order. It was to a T.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's what you do in case people have a heart problem, if you're finding a heart problem, if they're having problem breathing, if they have a cut, if they have a wound, if they're in an accident. They were completely perfect.
Fantastic. So after you've done the organizing and designing process, what's the next big hurdle? Is it the commitment to get it through? Is it the development time? Like what stops most people after that?
The problem, it's not as easy as typesetting a book, because you need to take the material and create a vision, someone else's vision. So it's the branding, it's how it looks. It's making sure that it's engaging and keeps the learner's attention. And it can't be too long or too boring. I mean, you can't just have text on a screen. You have to make it interesting. You need different interactivity, depending on the demographics and the type of learner you're dealing with. You can have games, you can have drag and drop, you could have all types of different types of interactivities.
Student engagement is definitely one of the things we've heard, especially over the arc of this pandemic. Our community has definitely told us that is one of the number one challenges, is that, look, we can put the content there and we can do stuff, but how do we keep the learners engaged? And that's from corporate America, the corporate universe, all the way down through K through 12.
Well, right now, knowing from experience, watching it happen every day, it's very hard to keep a 5-year-old engaged on a computer. No matter how many games you play. And I can see also from a teacher standpoint. I mean, my wife teaches at a very poor school, and my daughter teaches at the exact opposite end at one of the more exclusive schools in Manhattan. And the difference between the two is startling.
In terms of engagement, in terms of parent involvement, like what are like the top three things
across the board? Number one, these students had to my wife's students had to get computers. They didn't have them.
Sure.
So the school system had to get them Chromebooks. My daughter's school, everyone gets a Mac when they get into school. The preparation and the type of software used. My wife they use Google Meet, which is, in Google Docs. My daughter has this incredibly sophisticated software.
Okay. All right. Okay. You've just given us a very clear data point of evidence about the digital divide, eh?
Oh, and it's a societal divide as well. I mean, you see it now. You see it every day.
Interesting.
Especially during the pandemic, it brought it to a head. I mean, look at what's going on with the vaccine. We're trying to determine who gets the vaccine first. How we make sure that it gets into the poorer people's hands, or even the poorer country's hands.
Sure, absolutely.
Why should they be any less able to get it than we are?
Here, absolutely.
I don't want to preach. The last thing I want to do is preach. No politics, no religion.
I have every confidence that the people that are listening to this this podcast are going to agree with you that we need accessibility for all that. Take me through some of the ones that you've talked about. You've got American Sign Language, you've got the emergency room person, you've got the Zipline people. It sounds to me like a lot of these could end up being, as you said, there's a certification at the end. There's how to do this. You're now qualified. How does that process work in the courses that you build? Are you building digital badges? Are you certifying through like a government system, or like what's the process there?
The badges are usually done in the LMS, and we don't usually get involved with that. We have consultants who can help. But to do everything for everybody is asking a lot. I'd rather concentrate on what we do best. So, our instructional designers, our graphic designers are really good. If I start branching out into doing too much, we lose the focus on what we really do well.
Okay. All right.
So we do have resources where we can recommend LMS experts, and there are so many LMSs out there.
Sure.
And everyone has their own desire for information and analytics. Everyone wants something different. So to try to be one for everything is really difficult.
Are you finding as well for your clients that where, I guess, I don't want to lead the question, so that I want to hear your answer. Where are most people engaging with this content now? So if you build, again, take the examples that you have. Are people viewing it in their office? Is it their home on their laptop? Is it on a mobile phone? Is it on a tablet? Where are people accessing the information and actually going to school, going to the learning?
I would say that as you get into the younger groups, a lot of it is mobile. So you have to make sure that the design works on the mobile as well as it does on the screen,
Okay.
on a large screen.
All right.
So it can't be, too much information on any one screen. And the idea is to break it down into chunks that you could do in small pieces, so they don't have to sit for an hour and do everything. They can come back to it, pick up where they left off, and move on.
Okay.
And everybody has their own criteria about, what's the right answer, how many times you can try it. And the analytics on the back end through the LMS are as varied as the type of courses that we produce.
Mm. And so do you have recommendations for people when I could see I could see plenty of content creators coming in and saying, I'm not sure how many questions should I ask, or how, how do I determine whether or not somebody actually understands this knowledge? Do you have, or do you rely upon the content creators to set those criteria?
No, our instructional designers will ask the questions.
Mm.
And what you'll normally find is courses could be weak in some point. And when you look at the macro analytics on the back end, you'll see that a bunch of questions or a bunch of material in an e-learning course create the most problems. Mm. And for the people who create the content, that's a great way of knowing where your course needs to be improved.
Okay. You kind of taken me to a great place there too. Like, how often do you update? So, you've created a course today, and let's just say we've launched it. Is this something where I'm updating it every week, every month, every 6 months? What's your recommendation there?
Well, some of it is done via regulation. So, for instance, the Zipline people, if the regulations on safety changes, they need to update. Mm. Mm-hmm. American Sign Language, they hadn't updated their book in 20 years. Now it's going to be easy for them to update. Okay. They don't have to go through a whole printing process and editing process and developing. They just take out a couple of slides or add a couple of slides.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, digital gives you a lot of more flexibility.
And would you recommend, is that something where do they receive their feedback? Does that come through the LMS? Do you recommend that they set up a specific place to get feedback, or?
Usually comes through the LMS.
Okay.
There are usually, we've added surveys, we've added to courses to where the actual learners can give feedback to the people who created the course.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is it that you are looking at? I asked this sort of like the last question I ask everybody in this interview is, when you're looking at 6 months from now, when you're looking at 12 months from now, is there a shiny new object that you're really excited about? Is there a new content, type of content that you're really excited about? Is there a new format or process that you're really excited about that you would like to tell others about?
Yeah, definitely. There's AR, there's VR, there's MR, which is mixed reality, and there's AI.
Okay.
All of those will be starting to be developed more and more as the devices become more accessible and as content is created, it's less expensive to create. Think of the Matrix, plug in and learn something.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully we won't get that far, but putting on a VR headset and trying to learn something is the ultimate way of engaging with content.
Have you built any courses through VR yet?
Not yet. No. We fooled around with it. Actually, we've done something for our books. So there is a book out there that will, if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, for instance, you can download this book and you can take an adventure with Sherlock Holmes and run around London to the different places that are shown in the book with geolocation and VR and AR, where you can wear Sherlock Holmes' hat, smoke his pipe, and wind up at the pub at the end of the story.
That's fantastic. Well, Jan, I can't thank you enough for having a conversation with us this day. And I love leaving it there because it gives us a chance to circle back and, next year talk to you about how you're starting to invest in virtual reality courses and those kinds of things. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks so much for your time today. And I wish you all the luck.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
Thanks again for tuning into today's episode of the e-learning podcast. If you like what you've learned today in this episode, I encourage you to either follow us or subscribe to us on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. And please do share this episode with one or two of your colleagues or friends. Also, I just want to remind you that you can level up your online learning game with all of the information that's available at the eLearning Success Summit. You can get your free ticket at elearningsuccesssummit.com. And finally, you can also stay up to date on everything that's important, all the news and the resources for e-learning professionals at lmspulse.com. Get our free newsletter by just going to lmspulse.com today. Thanks again.